Is it Imperator or Imperator? Whatever. This guy is the first boss of the Voidspire raid in the Midnight expansion, and it features a mechanic never before seen in WoW, tic-tac-toe. Since this is my first video, I want to do a quick explanation of how you can get the most out of watching. My goal is to provide only the critical information that a raider needs to complete the fight in the mechanics section. Since a vast majority of WoW players are DPS, this covers only mechanics that affect the entire raid or DPS specifically. I purposefully split out healer and tank specific mechanics into their own sections. I also have a separate section for strategy optimizations which everybody might want to watch, but may not be useful if your raid ends up implementing a different strategy. At the end of the mechanics section, I include timers from the latest testing. Obviously, these have a high likelihood of changing once the patch goes live, so take these with a heavy grain of salt. With that done, I'm Odie, and let's get to it. Averzian is a solo boss fight with a frequently spawning large number of adds that have a mix of priority and trash mobs. A common theme that you'll hear throughout this raid tier is that you can't stack the boss on the adds or they'll enrage. So, this fight will favor classes with spread AoE capabilities, or those that can talent into both single target and burst AoE damage, while being able to easily target swap between the boss and the adds. Simple really, just have the benefit of all classes. But let's be honest, it's a first boss, so it's not going to be difficult enough to require any comp optimizations. The main focus of the fight revolves around playing a slightly different version of tic-tac-toe than you're used to. Here's all you need to know as a generic raider. 3 DPS immune adds are going to spawn on the tic-tac-toe board. The tanks are going to get 2 staggered group soaks that they will place on 2 of the adds to kill them, and you need to be in the soak. There is no debuff preventing you from soaking twice, so you should be in every soak possible. That's it. Everything else will be handled by your tank or raid leader, and I'll cover it more in the strategy section, but you really don't need to know more. There is very little else for the raid to interact with on this fight, which is to be expected of a first boss. The boss casts Oblivion Wrath, which shoots daggers out from his position that you simply dodge. After each turn of tic-tac-toe, the boss will spawn the remaining big add and a bunch of medium and small adds that you'll need to kill. When the big add spawns, he will shoot beams in a 5-point pattern that you need to dodge. When the trash mobs get low, they will try to run to a space that the boss has taken control of, and if they reach it, will begin to channel a cast back to full health. You're going to need to interrupt the pitch bulwark cast that all the medium-sized adds do. It will put a shield on all of the other adds, so it's important to make sure it doesn't go off. I don't know what the state of add-ons like interrupt trackers will be in Midnight, so just make sure everyone is paying attention to interrupt casts whenever possible. After a few turns of tic-tac-toe, the boss will cast Voidfall, which knocks everyone back at the start of the cast. So watch the boss timer, and it will spawn a bunch of dodge circles for 20 seconds. On heroic testing, that's all this mechanic did, but the dungeon journal has since been updated to also do the Mythic version, which we will discuss in a second, so you'll just have to wait and see which version comes out on live. 6 players will now get a debuff called Void Marked, and each of the DPS immune adds at the boss spawns will now have a shield on them that requires players with Void Marked to be dispelled on top of them. 2 players must be dispelled on each shield before the group soak can be landed on top of the add to kill it. So make sure you are standing on top of an add at all times. You also must have the debuff dispelled off of you within 25 seconds or you die. Make sure you can easily see your debuffs for this fight. During testing, there was no sound or text warning when you got the debuff. There was a visual circle, but I'm not sure exactly what it's going to look like on live, so make sure you're paying attention. There's more on this mechanic in the strategy section. The Oblivion Wrath dodge daggers will now return back to the boss's position where they were fired, and go all the way to the center hitbox of the boss. You can think of these similar to one-armed bandit fire tornadoes. When the boss casts Voidfall, he will now also spawn waves of NPCs that take up 2 out of the 3 columns on the board. The entire raid will need to dodge these, so this is a good place for AoE speed increases. On Mythic, a new add spawns and sends out a cursed debuff called Black Miasma. This reduces your haste by 70%, but can simply be dispelled. However, especially in early weeks when adds are up for a long time, you need to be careful to make sure not to dispel yourself if you have Black Miasma if you also have Void Marked and aren't standing on a shield add. This will be less and less likely as time goes on and gear gets better, because the adds will be dead before the boss puts Void Mark debuffs out. Here are the timings for the fight, and I suspect that these might be sped up on live because as of last testing, the boss could have been killed at around 4 minutes and only 3 squares of the tic-tac-toe board would have been taken up, so there's not much of an issue with the enrage at all. You can also find this link below in the description, so I'm not going to leave it up here on screen for long. If you want to hear some optimizations around these mechanics, or you have a role other than DPS, I encourage you to keep watching. Otherwise, that's all you need to know. Feel free to follow me on Twitch, where I'll be streaming re-clears, keys, beta, and progression when the patch goes live. I'd also love to hear any comments that you guys have to make these videos better, as I'm trying to increase my content creation skills. Before getting into the tic-tac-toe mechanic, I want to quickly cover the dodge daggers. On all testing I saw, the Oblivion Wrath daggers do not actually shoot out in an equal circle around the boss. There was always this weird safe space on the right side of the boss. This is even more important on Mythic, as the daggers return back to the original position, but the safe space is still safe. It's not clear to me if this is intentional or was a bug, because you can also see some daggers not evenly positioned around the boss, so it may not go live like this. But if this does go live, you can make some optimizations around positioning where you're always facing the boss so that the right side of the boss will be towards the raid. On Mythic, it would also be a good idea to move the boss away from where he shot the daggers, since they'll be returning to the original position, and that would mess up your melee's uptime, so they'll thank you a lot. I'm going to give a complete explanation of my understanding of the tic-tac-toe mechanic so you can get a better feel for how it actually works. Of course, this is just what I know, and this may not even be how it works when the patch goes live, so take it with a grain of salt. Boss starts by spawning those 3 immune adds, each in their own random square of the board, and then the tank will get the first group soak. After it resolves, the second group soak will go out. The only way to kill the immune adds is to hit them with the group soaks. After the second group soak resolves, any remaining adds will become active and the boss will put a void portal at their position on the tic-tac-toe board. The boss will continue to do this mechanic throughout the fight, and if at any point there are ever 3 portals in a row, the boss wipes the raid. Hence, tic-tac-toe. The only real strategy is that you never want to get 3 portals in a row, but there is a little bit of extra info that can help you prepare. Every wave of tic-tac-toe appears to spawn the 3 immune adds in adjacent squares to existing void portals. So if the top right square has been taken by the boss in the first wave, the next 3 adds will attempt to spawn here. Therefore, you can pre-position the raid to avoid having to do large moves. With this in mind, it makes sense to try and let the first square taken be one of the corners, as it then gives the boss the least number of potential spaces to spawn the new adds, and reduces raid movement. The only Mythic strat change is that I now recommend that you assign healers to dispel. I would personally assign 2 healers to handle the Void Mark mechanic, and no one else should dispel someone with Void Mark. You can have 1 healer assigned to call who they are dispelling each time, while the other healer simply dispels anyone else with the debuff. Everyone should be stacked on top of the immune adds at all times while they're active, so that you never miss a dispel out in the middle of nowhere. Once the first 2 dispels have broken the shield on the first add, the 4 remaining players can leave immediately and go to the second add without waiting for the group soak. Then, your same 2 healers can dispel again when their CD is up. You can also opt to mass dispel the players on the second add, but note, you cannot do this on the first add. You will use up too many of your debuffs and not have enough left over to break the shield on the second add. On Mythic, the trash mobs spawned 1 from each square of the tic-tac-toe board, meaning that the boss was immediately going to be enraged when the add spawned. The enrage only lasts while the add and the boss are close together, so we found the easiest way of handling this was to tank the boss on the outside edge of the room, and when the add spawn, immediately death grip the add on that square that the boss is on to the middle of the room, and tank all the adds in the middle. This strat may not work later in the fight if you let the boss place a void portal in the middle, because then all of the adds will get enraged or try to run back to the void portal to heal. It's probably going to be more important in early progression to focus on nuking down the adds as fast as possible so that casts and curse debuffs don't get out of control than it will be to try to optimize split damage between single target on the boss and AoE on the adds. The final little tip of strategy that I have on this fight revolves around pre-positioning for the Voidfall mechanic. To ensure that the raid has enough time to dodge the columns of NPCs, it makes sense to have the majority of the raids standing at the entrance of the room farthest away from where they spawn. If you still have adds alive while this is happening, which is very possible in the early weeks of progression, you would want your tank who's handling the adds to be tanking them in the middle square of the room while the raid is at the entrance so they aren't enraging the boss. The damage on this fight is very flat, with the vast majority of it being constant ticking damage from Dark Upheaval. The only other damage events are the Group Soak, Voidfall cast, and unavoidable damage from the adds, but none of those really did any significant amount of damage, which of course could change come live. 2 healers can handle all of the Void Mark debuff dispels, but the others can still act as backups if things go crazy or if you have good communication. The Mythic add that spawns and puts the curse debuff on players, reducing their haste by 70%, is very good to dispel quickly and should be prioritized by your healers who aren't assigned to handle the Void Mark debuff, although the Void Marked healers can also dispel this debuff. Besides the Group Soak, the boss will only do one other tank mechanic called Blackening Wounds. This puts a stacking 4% health reduction on the tank for 20 seconds. The debuff also has this useful weakened effect as well, which as stated works as sort of an AoE taunt when all of the adds spawn. So the tank who has the higher stacks of blackening wounds will want to be the tank who is going to be taking all of the adds when they spawn. This will effectively give them free aggro for 10 seconds, and all of the adds should rush to that tank. This fight, like many others in this raid tier, is going to require a lot of boss movement. The group soaks need to be taken to the proper places on the tic-tac-toe board, and the boss must be moved away from small adds, void portals, and the voidfall mechanic columns. So make sure you are always prepared for what move you're going to need to make next. The group soak is easily handled by having the first tank take the boss to the first add, and then the moment that tank is targeted by the group soak, the second tank taunts the boss off of that to the second add. This ensures that the group soak will hit the adds that you want. However, this will be a huge loss on melee uptime on the boss, as the boss will be leaving the first group soak while everyone is still stuck there waiting for it to go off. To reduce this, you can change your taunt timing so that your second tank is taunting immediately after the first group soak goes off, but he is already standing on the second add where it needs to go. This way, melee can just follow the boss right after the first group soak and end up in the second group soak. It's important to note that as of the last testing that I did, the tank who's targeted by the group soak and the boss can both move while the group soak is still being cast.